In 1978, the average Chinese person earned less than someone in war-torn Somalia. Today, China builds more infrastructure in a year than most countries do in a decade. What happened? This is what nobody talks about when they discuss China's rise. Everyone thinks it was just cheap labor and factories. The real story is way more interesting, and honestly, kind of insane. We're talking about the fastest mass escape from poverty in human history. 800 million people lifted out of extreme poverty in just 40 years. That's like taking the entire population of Europe from dirt poor to middle class in less than 2 generations. And it all started with one man who got kicked out of power twice, survived a revolution, and came back to completely flip the script on how China worked. Let me paint you a picture of China in 1978. We're not talking about being a little poor. We're talking about a country where people were literally starving to death by the millions just years earlier. The average income was $156 a year, not per month, per year. Your parents probably spend more than that on coffee. Under Mao Zedong, China tried something called the Great Leap Forward in the late 1950s. The idea was to turn China into an industrial powerhouse overnight. Instead, it became one of the worst man-made disasters in history. Between 15 and 55 million people died, mostly from starvation. Farmers were forced to make steel in their backyards instead of growing food. It was a disaster. By the time Mao died in 1976, China was economically dead. The country produced less steel than Belgium. Belgium. A country you could drive across in 2 hours. China had a quarter of the world's population, but produced just 2% of global GDP. To put that in perspective, today they produce about 18% of global GDP. The countryside was stuck in the Middle Ages. No electricity in most villages, no running water. Farmers using the same tools their great-grandparents used. Cities weren't much better. Everyone wore the same blue or gray Mao suits because that's all there was. No private businesses, no foreign investment, no individual freedom to even choose what job you wanted. The government assigned you a job. And that was it. This is where our main character enters. Deng Xiaoping. Deng was short, barely 5 feet tall, but he had survived things that would break most people. He'd been purged from the Communist Party twice during Mao's Cultural Revolution. His son was thrown out of a window by Red Guards and paralyzed for life. Deng was sent to work in a tractor factory, but he came back. When Deng took power in 1978, he was 74 years old. Most people that age are thinking about retirement. Deng was thinking about how to save 1 billion people from poverty, and he had a plan that went against everything Communist China had stood for. This is what he said, and it is probably the most important quote in modern economic history. "It doesn't matter if a cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice." He didn't care if an idea was capitalist or communist. If it worked, China would do it. This was revolutionary. Remember, this is Communist China we're talking about. Private business was supposed to be evil. Profit was a dirty word. But Deng looked at the numbers and realized something simple. The system wasn't working. People were starving. Something had to change. Deng knew he couldn't just flip a switch and turn China capitalist overnight. That would freak everyone out, especially the old guard communists who still had power. So he came up with a brilliant compromise. He created special economic zones, or SEZs. Think of them as capitalism test labs inside a communist country. In 1980, China designated 4 cities as SEZs: Shenzhen, Zhuhai, Shantou, and Xiamen. These cities got special rules. Foreign companies could invest there. Private businesses could operate. People could own property. Basically, capitalism was legal, but only in these tiny zones. Let me tell you about Shenzhen, because this is mind-blowing. In 1979, Shenzhen was a fishing village of 30,000 people. Dirt roads, no buildings over 3 stories, nothing. Today, Shenzhen has over 12 million people. It's the tech capital of China. It makes more smartphones, drones, and electronics than almost anywhere on Earth. In 40 years, it went from rice paddies to a skyline that looks like something from a science fiction movie. The SEZ experiment worked so well that China opened more, and more. By the 1990s, entire coastal regions were operating under these special rules. But Deng didn't just copy Western capitalism, he created something new. The government still owned major industries and land, but private companies could operate, hire, fire, and keep profits. Foreign companies could build factories, but often had to partner with Chinese firms. It was capitalism with Chinese characteristics. Before China could become a factory powerhouse, it needed to fix its farms. This is where things get interesting, because the change started from the bottom up, not top down. In a small village in Anhui province in 1978, 18 farmers held a secret meeting. They signed a contract agreeing to divide communal farmland among themselves. Each family would farm their own plot and keep what they grew. This was illegal. If caught, they could be executed. But they were desperate. The result? Their harvest that year was bigger than the previous 5 years combined. Word spread. Other villages started doing the same thing. Eventually, the practice became so widespread that Deng had to make it official policy. By 1984, China had dismantled the commune system that had been in place for decades. This was huge. When farmers could keep what they grew more. A lot more. Agricultural output exploded. This did two important things. First, people stopped starving. Second, it freed up millions of workers to leave farms and work in factories. Between 1978 and 1984, agricultural output grew by over 60%. That's in just 6 years. This created a surplus of both food and labor, which was perfect timing for what came next. In the 1980s and 90s, Western companies were looking for cheaper places to manufacture their products. Japan had gotten too expensive. South Korea was rising, but still pricey. Then they looked at China. China had 3 massive advantages.